welcome to the second edition of the COVID-19 Diary, brought to you by the COVID-19 Africa Rapid Grant Fund and supported by the National Research Foundation in Southern Africa. My name is Ajiman Otrodako, and I'm glad to be your host for this webinar, bringing you the understanding of the myth versus the science of the coronavirus. You're all welcome, participants all over the world who have joined us on this webinar. You're welcome to this webinar, and it stands promising because we're going to demystify lots of perceptions and, most importantly, some of the conspiracy theories and the myth that we've had surrounding the coronavirus. And in here are our seasoned experts all over the world to help us understand what the myths are and what the scientific facts are also. So we'll be joined by many speakers, the likes of Dr. Tetteh-Ahinakwa, the Vice President of the Novavax USA and Assistant Professor, Johns Hopkins University, USA. We'll have Ms. Doris, Emakaili, Medical Lab Scientist and Health Initiative for Safety and Stability in Africa, Nigeria. We'll be joined by Ms. Jessica Huang, researcher, Meedan Digital Health Lab, USA. Mr. Charlse Wendo, a science journalist and training coordinator at Science Development Uganda. Ms. Jubiel Zulu, a science journalist and working with Kwithu FM in Zambia. And Mr. Rabiu Alhassan, managing editor for Ghana Facts in Ghana. So it stands promising that we'll have our speakers ready, prepared to serve you with all the facts you need to demystify and decipher all the myth we've had about COVID-19. More importantly, the project seems to help the public with lay expertise support to ensure that the public also are also on the same level with the understanding we have on the coronavirus, so we can move our continents. So without mincing words, I'm going quickly to our chairperson for the event, who's in the person of Ms. Nodumo Dlamini, the director for knowledge management and IT services here at the AAU, to give a short opening remark. Then she introduces speaker, our SG, for the welcome address. So I want to welcome Madame Nodumo Dlamini to join us in giving the opening address.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone from Accra, Ghana. It's a pleasure to be with you again for another session of the COVID-19 Diary. As you remember, the Association of African Universities received a grant under the National Research Foundation of South Africa to implement this project. In this project, as it has been said, we would like to bring to the floor discussions around about pandemics and try and find out the readiness of our public health systems to be able to handle pandemics, and in particular the COVID-19 pandemic. But we are also very keen to engage a diverse group of stakeholders so that we ensure that we are moving together in the same direction in terms of awareness raising, policy development, and also ensuring that we demystify the myths around the pandemics, particularly the COVID-19. So it's my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you from wherever you are connecting from, and we hope that the event will be useful for you. We are supposed to have our Secretary General, Professor Oyewole. I think he has joined, and my duty this afternoon is to welcome him and also introduce him to you. Professor Olushola Bandele Oyewole is our Secretary General at the Association of African Universities. He has also previously worked as a staff of the Association of African Universities and a staff of the African Union Commission. He's also the former president of the Association of African Universities. Most of you will also remember him as the Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Agriculture in Abeokuta, Nigeria. Professor Olushola Bandele Oyewole is a professor of food science and technology. That is his specialty. As expected, he has published widely in scholarly and peer-reviewed journals. He has also published book chapters, books, conference, and technical papers. For your information, Professor Olushola Oyewole holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, a Master of Science degree from the prestigious University of Ibadan, and also a doctorate in food science and technology, also from the University of Ibadan. Professor Oyewole, you are most welcome. I hope you have been unmuted so that you give us your remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, distinguished and able science experts, members of the scientific and academic community connected to this program, health journalists and science journalists, members of the INKI fraternity and the mass media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I stand on established protocols to welcome you all to this virtual meeting of the Association of African Universities. For those of you who are new to this organization, I want to use this opportunity to introduce AAU to you. The association is Africa Apex Higher Education Body, established in November 1967. Our current membership is drawn from over 400 higher education institutions spread across all the major geographical and linguistic divides of Africa. And our mission is to enhance the quality and relevance of higher education in Africa and strengthen its contributions to Africa's development. In March 2020, the AAU won a competitive bid for a $20,000 grant from the COVID-19 Africa Rapid Grant Fund through the National Research Foundation, NRF of South Africa, to champion the development of media contents on public health data on emerging infectious diseases such as COVID-19. This is to support the science and health journalists and communicators in producing and disseminating actual information and analysis that can be accessed by a wide variety of communities to inform their actions and challenge misinformation put out to confuse the public. Leveraging the existence of its television unit, the AAU TV, the Association of African Universities has developed a series of informative programs on COVID-19 and by extension, emerging infectious diseases to provoke discussion on how the public health system in Africa can deal with them. We dropped this program, the COVID-19 Diary. The program is rolling out 5 key productions on specific themes on COVID-19, namely, number 1, understanding the genome of SARS-CoV-2. Number 2, COVID-19 myths and science. Number 3, environmental factors and COVID-19. Number 4, COVID-19 variants, vaccines, and herd immunity. And number 5, COVID-19 and home care. The first episode, titled Understanding the Genome of SARS-CoV-2, was produced in August this year and is available on the AAU Facebook, and you study the myths versus science of COVID-19. It intends to hear from the experts on the various myths that do not seem to go away and to support us science and health journalists and communicators should sift and disseminate factual information for access by the broader public. Every one of us will agree with me that there is no better time to address this issue than now, because we now talk about conspiracy theories around COVID-19. I would need to let you know, people had expected the devastation of Africa by COVID-19 and cannot explain the really resistance of the African continent to the pandemic. Hear this again. People are angry at the effrontery of South Africa being the first to sequence the genome of the new variant Omicron, and they cannot understand what is happening. As things are right now, there are various myths going on about Africa and COVID-19. My own expectation and prayer is that things will work out, that final solution to COVID-19 will come from Africa. Please, before I end up this short comment at the beginning, let me appreciate a great leader in higher education that is connected to this program, our leader, Professor Pai Obayan. I'm always glad when you connect to our programs. We appreciate it greatly. Please, the program you are connected to is dubbed COVID-19 Diary. And we've got together some special experts that are ready to provide the science to challenge the myths. Let me use this opportunity to express the gratitude, my personal gratitude, and the gratitude of Association of African Universities to the top brass experts that are working in the field who will be contributing to this discussion. I want to appreciate Dr. Aaron Tetteh-Ahinakwa, Assistant Professor at Johns Hopkins University in the US and Vice President, Novavax USA. Ms. Jessica Huang is a researcher at Meedan Digit Health Laboratory in the USA. Ms. Doris Emakaili is a medical laboratory scientist at the Health Initiative for Safety and Stability in Africa, Nigeria. Ms. Charlse Wendo is a science journalist and training coordinator, science development in Uganda. Ms. Jubiel Zulu is a science journalist, Kwithu FM from Zambia. Mr. Rabiu Alhassan is the managing editor of Ghana Facts in Ghana. We are very grateful to all of you for your time to share and improve our knowledge on the pandemic and other infectious diseases. To you, the distinguished participants, and many of you who are connected to this program, I entreat all of you just to listen to the contributions and take the advantage to engage our experts and build a solid network for continuous engagement. To my colleagues, science journalists at the AU TV, I'm very proud of you. And to the other technical crew supporting this webinar, I say congratulations for rolling out this program for the benefits of mankind. I am expecting much of such activities coming out from AU. AAU, we are out to service African higher education development, and we are out to help universities to contribute to the development of their nations. This program is one of our efforts. You are all welcome to this program. I look forward to a very robust discussion during this program. Thank you very much.
Ajeman, can you please take over the program?
Thank you very much to Professor Olushola Bandele Oyewole, Secretary General for the Association of African Universities, for your apt and succinct presentation for the running of the COVID-19 Diary second edition. Back here, we also want to take it on the journey thus far. So since we began some months ago with the launch and the inception of the COVID-19 Diary, you would want to appreciate how far we've come since the point where we incepted the program to now. So I will now invite a colleague, science journalist here at the Association of African University Television to also take over, the person of Miss Isabella Tetteh-Ahinakwa. also the host of Health Afrique. So let's welcome her as she takes over with the journey so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajumana. Once again, you're all welcome to the second episode of the COVID-19 Diary under the topic, Understanding the Myth versus the Science Surrounding the Novel Coronavirus. And my name is Tetteh-Ahinakwa. As he said, I'm here to present to you all the COVID-19 Diary's journey so far. I would like to start with telling you about the COVID-19 Diary. So the COVID-19 Diary is a new television program on AAU TV, and it is funded by the COVID-19 Africa Rapid Grants Fund, which is an initiative by the National Research Foundation South Africa. And the aim is to support science and health journalists and communicators in producing and disseminating factual information that will be accessed by a number of people across the world. And with this, the AAU TV adopted a hybrid of 4 models of science journalism to run the program. We actually took 4 models to run the program, and these are science literacy. When we talk about science literacies, we science journalists are going to translate scientific information and the research findings that are transmitted from the experts to our audience. And then the next one is contextual models. This model is going to facilitate the relations of science to our audience, in that relevant information and then also our audience needs and situation will be taken into considerations when we are trying to bring up programs and productions. And then the next one is lay expertise. This model is going to actually enable our communities to have useful information that can be shared at the same time to participate in scientific processes. And then the last but not the least is public participation. AAU TV is going to make use of the various social media platforms to engage our audience, the public, to participate in all scientific processes, to engage in discussions such as the public health system. And then with this, we came up with 5 thematic topics to run the program, and these are understanding the genome of SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 myth versus science, environmental factors and COVID-19, COVID-19 variants, vaccines and herd immunity, COVID-19, and home care. Now, our successes, what we've been able to achieve so far. Now, before we began the program, 5 AAU TV hosts underwent a 3-week in-house training in science and health journalism with a focus on COVID-19 in July 2021. This was to kind of skills us up to run the program, to make us professional so that we'll be able to run the program. And then after that, under the topic supporting science journalism on COVID-19 and other infectious diseases in Africa, the COVID-19 Diary was successfully launched, and this was done virtually on 24th September 2021. We had over 300 people registering for the webinar, but about 1/3 of them participating during the webinar. And then on 23rd August 2021, the team released, actually the first episode of the COVID-19 Diary was released, and this was under the first topic. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to produce 5 topics, and the topic was Understanding SARS-CoV-2. It's a 42-minute video, and it has been shared on our social media handles, Facebook and YouTube, Association of African Universities. On this topic, we had the science journalist explaining the origin of the coronavirus, how it originated, how the names of a virus are being, how a virus is being named. They shared the differences between the bacteria and then the virus. They also educated us on how the virus is transmitted, and when the virus enters into your body, how it's going to infect your cells, and then how you are going to develop the symptoms. All this was explained in the video. So if you've not watched the video yet, you can go to Association of African Universities on Facebook and YouTube to watch the video. And then last but not the least, in preparation for this episode, which is the second episode, the team conducted a survey on COVID-19 perceptions to obtain data for the second episode. And I'm going to leave that for my colleague. She's going to explain that into further. Now, the challenges we faced during the beginning till now, which is engagement with African science journalists to participate, and then with experts such as health experts, researchers, scientists, policymakers, among others. It's actually not been easy to engage with these people. I remember at the beginning of the program, we wrote a lot of letters to actually invite them to be part of us to run the program, but due to work policies and then ethics, many of them have not been able to join it. Yet we are still on it to at least gather a lot of science journalists to join us run the program. And also, every day, more and new information about the pandemic changes. Science is dynamic. Each and every day, new findings comes up. And even in the beginning, we decided to do 3 productions, but then as and when more information comes out, it developed to 5 thematic productions. And we know it's also going to increase from 5 to another number. So this is also another challenge. Now, what's next? After this webinar, we are going to have a studio production of this topic, that is understanding the myth versus science of the novel coronavirus. And then we are going to develop a radio script for broadcasting on Voice of Africa. We are going to also develop podcast and voice notes to be broadcasted via WhatsApp and other media. We are also going to organize one virtual and one virtual symposium to strengthen the collaborations among science journalists, health journalists, communicators, among others. And also, we don't want to end there, so we are going to create lively community involving science journalists, health journalists, communicators, higher education communities, researchers, policymakers, and the public, so that we can all run the program and then go on and go on and go on. These are the team behind the COVID-19 diary. We have Mr. Ajiman Ochredakon, a science journalist at AAU. We have myself, Isabella Tetteh-Ahinakwa, science journalist at AAU. We have Imelda Amuji, who is also a science journalist at AAU. And then Abigail Ajuanyani, producer of the COVID-19 diary at AAU. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoy this webinar.
Thank you very much, Isabella Tetteh-Ahinakwa, for your presentation on the journey so far. I believe that you really enjoyed the presentation, also appreciated the efforts that have been placed in thus far to ensure that we've come to this point with our webinar. And as the future looks so bright with so much other engagement, to ensure that we create we provide a clear knowledge in the African continent so far as the novel coronavirus is concerned, and other infectious diseases that are also going to emanate, we will be able to provide the understandings needed. Now we're going to move to our next presenter, who is also a science journalist, to give us the survey that we conducted. Initially, as Bella expressed, that there was a survey that was conducted within a week, and we wanted to just find out from the people with the various myths and conspiracies to see what their stance were on each of them. And you'll be thrilled on some of the responses that we gathered and where they were coming from. So let me just not miss words and take time away. I'll just introduce to you Ms. Imelda Giselle Amuji to also present to you the survey report on the COVID-19 diary, second edition.
Okay, my name is Imelda Amuji, a science journalist at the AAU. So straight to our survey. The COVID-19 diary crew from the AAU conducted a week survey on the perception about the COVID-19 virus infection. And the objective of this survey was to determine the level of public knowledge on the COVID-19 in terms of its mode of transmission, treatment, vaccine, and impact of infection. Also to engage experts to respond to perceptions from this survey with scientifically proven facts. The survey lasted for just 6 days with a sample small size drawing just about 100 people with revealing responses. Also, our reports are in figures, not in percentages. The survey was actually supposed to be run in Ghana, but because of an online tool, we had responses from other parts of the world that involved 12 other countries from all around the world with various academic qualification of our respondents. For the respondents' occupations, we had many who were teachers, accountants, broadcasters, traders, and civil servants. And with their source of information about the COVID-19, most made mention of journals, radio, websites, internet, social media, COVID-19 app, and also with their perception on how COVID-19 is transmitted. Most of them made mention of physical contacts, coughing, handshakes, inhalations, and infected objects when one comes to contact with such things, and also using personal belongings of infected people. Moving on, poor hygiene, sweat, crowded locations, neglecting protocols, and through public washrooms. Now straight to our survey. With the statement, COVID-19 was manufactured from a laboratory in China. With that statement, we had 41 people who think it's almost true, and also 28 of our respondents who said it's just not true. But then we have 18 of our respondents who say they have no idea how COVID-19 came into existence. Now, moving on to COVID-19 evolved from animals to humans. We have 41 of our respondents who says it's true and somehow true. And then 30 of them say it's so false. And 15 saying that they have no idea about this particular statement. Now, moving on. COVID-19 was deliberately manufactured to wipe out human beings. With this particular statement, we had 44 respondents opting for a false, and then 24 saying it's true and somehow true, and then 18 of them saying they have no idea about this particular statement. Then COVID-19 vaccine are being used to wipe out people with colors, blacks specifically. With this statement, we have many of our respondents say it was false. But then in Ghana and Zimbabwe, few of our respondents have the perception is true. Then taking the COVID-19 vaccine will make women infertile. With this particular statement, we had 51 respondents saying it's absolutely false, and 13 said it's true and somehow true. But then a handful of 19 people actually say they have no idea to contribute on this particular statement. Now, the tropical weather in Africa counting for a low infection of COVID-19. This statement had a majority of respondents agreeing to this. In view, then just 16 of them agree and just 8 have no idea. Mosquitoes can transmit COVID-19. With this, we had 9 respondents agreeing to this statement. 65 think it's false. Unfortunately, we have 11 others who have no stand for this statement. Then, moving on to some religious rites like fasting and prayers can cure COVID-19. 51 respondents says it was false. 28 others says it's somehow true and true. Then 8 others have no idea concerning this statement. You don't need to vaccinate against COVID-19 if you inhale with medicinal plants like neem leaf. With this statement, a high number of the respondents said it was false. 21 said it's true, and 10 of them actually said they have no idea. Moving on, high alkaline fruit like avocado, guava can reduce the virus acidity. With this statement, we have 35 respondents opting for a true, and 32 saying it's false, and then 18 have no idea about this particular statement. Drinking alcohol is an antidote against COVID-19. Very few agree to this statement. 10 of the respondents don't actually know. Then 63 of them say it's false. Getting the COVID-19 vaccine will reinfect you with COVID-19. We had 55 of the respondents who do not agree to this statement. 17 agree, 11 just don't know about this statement. Now, the COVID-19 vaccine shot should not be taken because of the negative side effects. With this, we had 25 respondents declaring falsehood. But then 17 said it's somehow true and true. And then 12 of them have no idea. Now, moving to the COVID-19 vaccination is a means to insert microchips in the human body. 16 of our participants disagreed. 53 agreed. And then 15 do not know. Now, the COVID-19 vaccine is capable of changing your DNA after it enters your cell. This particular statement had 54 participants disagreeing, 11 agreed, then 18 of them have no idea of their stand in this statement. And then, if wearing of masks is one of the best means of protection against COVID-19 infection, then we have all been infected. With this statement, we had 53 fully disagreeing to this statement, and 23 of them agreeing. And we have 7 who do not agree. Then, if physical distancing is a protection against COVID-19 infection, then everyone in the market will have been infected. With this statement, we had 42 participants agreeing, then 36 disagreeing. 7 of them had no idea. And any form of alcohol can be used to wipe the hand. We had 62 participants agreeing to this statement, then 15 agreeing, then 6 have no idea. With other comments from our respondents, we had information such as COVID-19 vaccines is government's way of raising revenue. And some other people said people are developing biological weapons out of COVID-19. I'm laughing because they are so funny. And others also said, if you chewed hair found in the Bible, you would be killed. Then we had other comments also like, it only affects the well-to-do. Well, in conclusion, this survey is still ongoing and the link will be shared on the platform so that everybody can actually partake in this survey. But we want to say the biological scientists and social scientists and all the stakeholders need a concerted effort now if the battle against the COVID-19 has to be won. And the AAE COVID-19 Diary is the advocacy platform for us to engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Imelda Muji, for your presentation. And you know, most important, this survey was meant to be actually was a week long, but it's still ongoing. So you can still visit our website or at aau.org and also be part and check your mails. We sent you copies of these links of these surveys, so you can also add your voice to it. What's your stand on these myths about concerning COVID-19? And more importantly also, participants who've joined the meeting should kindly check the name you joined with. Very important. Please kindly check the name you're joining with. If it's your name, that's fine. If it's not your name, kindly take time to rename yourself so we can identify you for who you are and not with someone's name. So if you can check, it's a short while just to rectify your name. If it's your name, you can leave it. If it's not your name, then please correct and change the name to your name. So as part of the survey, this survey was actually having a lower sample. It was quite 88 of the respondents because for the sake of the webinar, we had to just share with you some of the response. So we look forward to get up more for other prospective webinars as our premises to the findings. So I wouldn't want to mince words. We are now moving to the very first presentation on demystifying the myths surrounding the microchip theory and antibiotic treatment. So if you ever had the perception that maybe the COVID-19 vaccine is a means to insert chips into the human body, then now you would want to find out from an expert who is the president of Novavax USA, an assistant professor at the Johns Hopkins University in USA, the person of Dr. Aaron Tetteh-Ahinakwa. Vice President of the Novavax. Doc, if you can hear me, we want to hear from you on demystifying the myths surrounding the microchip theory and antibiotic treatment. The floor is yours, Doc.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ajuman. Thank you so much, Professor Olule, and all those who made this program very running and then organize this sort of program. I will be much glad to join this program at any time. I'm also excited about the presentations that you have, the statistics that you've put together, but much more onto vaccines. You see, it's better to understand the process with which the vaccine is produced, the rigorousness processes that it goes through before it gets approved. If you understand this and somebody comes to tell you that there's a microchip in a government has just instructed something of that nature, it is not true. It is not true. Let me tell you, you know, for a vaccine to come out, you need to go through an R&D. Scientists will meet in the research room and get a lead compound, which will lead them to what they want to do. So from the R&D, that's the research and development process, they will now go test in animals, which we call non-clinical studies. We do a non-clinical studies in animals, chiefly in monkeys and in rats, get the findings, and then also apply to do it in humans. You can't get up and do something right away in humans. You do an animal study, come up with your statistics, let the statistics be very valid, and before you move the process forward. Now, when you do it in animals and then you are satisfied with whatever you have, or the company is satisfied with whatever statistics they have and things of that nature, then you have to put in an application to do it in humans. We call it an IND, which is investigating that product or the vaccine which is coming out in humans. Now, in the United States, you have 30 days. If you don't hear from the authorities, from the FDA, it means you go ahead and do the clinical studies in humans. If there's any cause for us to believe that there's a hitch somewhere, the FDA will let you know that, no, we can't let you understand. We can't let you start this program unless we put you on hold. Now, take for instance, you've been given the idea, you've been given the go-ahead to do it in humans. Why we gather things on safety and efficacy of the drug? Whether, a hard drug or, not a hard drug, but whether it's a vaccine or an oral dose, we always have to guard against the safety and efficacy of it. So you do a phase 1 study, which involves volunteers and a few number of people, like 20 people. If the data which comes out from that is very satisfactory, you go ahead and do a phase 2 study, and then do a phase 3 study. You do phase 2 and then do a phase 3. Sometimes the FDA gives a brief for a phase 4 study. I will come to explain, those concepts. But then, in all these sort of things, we are looking out for the safety and the efficacy in the product which is going to come out. We don't want a situation where something shoddy comes out in that way. If you do a phase 3 study and the phase 3 study is very successful, all this while you have to be reporting the processes to a unit which monitors it. Now, in all these instances, okay, let's take it that your phase 3 studies were also very good. Now you have to apply to the FDA or whichever body, whether in Europe or anywhere, for what we call a BLA, that is biological license application. Through the biological application, you have to give us the animal studies, you have to give us the human studies, you have to give us the clinical studies, you also have to give us the chemistry, the manufacturing and control of the drug. We call it the CMC. All these things put together will give a panel of about 7 or 8. Sitting down, one person is not going to sit down to do that. They'll bring in experts to sit down 7 or 8. Somebody will check the toxicology of it. We also have to test the lethal level. The lethal level of a human being is also has a gauge. In the course of a phase 2 and a phase 3 study, we deal so much with the dose. How much dose should we give to humans to have a resolution to whatever we are doing? In fact, matter of fact, the reason the COVID-19 is really, really, really dangerous. It's killed so many people in the United States. And I know you know the statistics which follows that sort of thing. We really want to control it. I'm happy AAU is taking this sort of program. And I'm so excited that the program is also taking roots. But much more to this sort of thing, if you follow the way a vaccine comes into being, it goes through rigorous check. Rigorous check. We have to make sure that the product is safe. We've checked the lethal level of it. We make sure that everything that goes with it, it complies with the FDA regulations and much more on that. Even if the thing is approved, you see the 7 or 8 people panelists will sit down and analyze every aspect of it. If they're not satisfied, they push it back to you. There have been several occasions where companies sent things to the FDA rejected. You do a whole an FDA conference, that is a meeting with the FDA so that you all be on the same page. Sometimes it works, but you want to be on the same page in presenting a BLA for approval. And I've told you that the BLA will have to contain the chemistry of the drug. It has to contain the control and how you're going to manufacture it. Now they'll send people to the place to come and investigate, see the facility. Is the facility good enough? Does it control hygiene? Because this is a biological. What temperature, under what temperature are you doing this? All these sort of things, you have to go through it to get the vaccine approved. So my encouragement to the entire population is that, look, this thing is so dangerous. If you get a chance to take the shot, take the shot. I have taken my shot in April, my first one, my second one, and the booster. Why? Because I just want to be sure that everything is going very well. And I want to give the assurance to this thing that there's no, at what stage, with what I've produced, I've given you right now, at what stage would they put a microchip? You can't do it. That's not true. I wish they have, put questions to me and I would just have that. This is not true. There's a microchip. They have a microchip which is monitoring someone. You don't even know where the product is going. They are manufacturing the thing in wholesale. Take, for instance, the administrative sector might be different from where the manufacturing process takes place. And where it goes, well, you can't just say you can put a microchip and then whom are you targeting? A government cannot come to us and tell us that, please do this for us. No, we'll not do it. It's against protocol. It's not something that we just take. So those who have the notion that there's a microchip somewhere monitoring someone, and how important are you that we have to monitor you? These are some of the things that we saw. These are the processes which it goes through for final approval. If somebody tells you, comes to tell you that, oh, I suspect this, let the person go take, let them, I don't know what to say, but let them take their suspicion away. You tell the person that it's not true. And it is not true. I can just tell you emphatically, it's something I've been doing more than 25 years, so I can tell you with certainty on that. Does that answer your question, or you want me to throw more light on the development process? I don't think I'm missing anything, but if you file an IND goes through, you do your clinical studies. First you do it in animals, get a good animal studies result, move on to apply to do it in humans. And from humans, if you get everything right, you file a BLA, which is a biological license application. If that goes through, then it gets the approval. And the approval comes through a panel of judges. Eminent experts will sit down to give their assessment for the approval of the vaccine.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Aaron Tetteh-Ahinakwa, for your presentation. You presented on demystifying the myths surrounding the microchip theory and antibiotic treatment. And I would also want to break the webinar at this point for any questions you have. So if you joined us and you have a question for Dr. Aaron, you can raise your hands and you'll be invited to share your questions and comments. So we are in the first round of Q&A session. So from the studio, wherever you are in the world, joining us on this webinar, you are allowed to raise your hands and share with Dr. Aaron any issue you have, any question you have, or even with us back in the studio with regards with the COVID-19 diary, the journey so far, and what lies ahead. So we're ready to take the first round of questions, and the floor is open now. So let's see your hand up and let's invite you to share your comment or question with us. Okay, so Rahim Kolawole, you can unmute yourself and then share your question with us. Let us know where you're coming from, Rahim.
I am Kolawole Rahim, a professor at the University of Education, Winneba, but now I'm retired. I'm a Nigerian. I'm now in Lagos for the time being. Please, I am very interested in knowing what are we, the African intellectuals, doing about this COVID-19, in particular about the vaccines. Are we investing, or we continue to let people invest and then they give us free vaccine, which is not ours? I would like to know how far are we dealing with that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kolawole from University of Education, Winneba. Dr. Aaron, this is also in the front with regards to investment made so far for scientific research, as Dr. Kolawole has asked. Do you mind giving us a attempt on the answer?
Dr. Kolawole, I just want to, I think I agree with you that much more that we get other Western countries maybe giving vaccines or supplying us with this. I think we have to also, African leaders will also have to take that sort of initiative, because we cannot always be there and always be bread eaters, but not bread winners. We have to put in some sort of effort. So this is something that I'll be maybe coming to Africa to share some ideas. I don't know whom I'm going to meet, but then I want to sell the idea that we have to wake up. The vaccines getting to us in Africa is not enough. It cannot run the whole project. So we'll need to wake up ourselves and also take this mandate. As Africans, we also have to take that sort of this mandate. So it falls on the African leaders to do this kind of thing. I mean, we also have to put in our efforts and not always rely on foreign aid.
There are some efforts being made by some African governments to ensure that vaccine development, even though we began with vaccine nationalism initially, where we had to use COVAX as the intermediary to order vaccines into Africa through the African Union and some other countries in Africa, it plans to create vaccines in Africa is on the way, even though we've not heard it out publicly, but we believe that there are some efforts, but we have to hasten or perhaps enhance that activity, because it's about time that we also invest heavily into vaccine development in Africa. If not, we'll have to move to our next participant, Professor Olushola. Prof, you can unmute your mic, Prof, and share with us.
Thank you very much. There is a publication that has just been released by M.O. Ibrahim Foundation, and I will just read to you. It says, as of 18th November 2021, just 6.8% of African population has been fully vaccinated, against 66.8% in the G7 countries. It says that the pandemic has exposed Africa's fragile health capacities and excessive dependence on external supply. May I ask our speaker, what can Africa do to catch up at this time? Thank you.
We'll have to put together the questions and then have Dr. Aaron attempt them at a go. So we'll have to quickly go to David Atoli. David, you can quickly and share with us your brief comments or question, because for the good of time, so we can economize our time and then move on to the next presentation, please. Can we have John William Otim? John William Otim, can you hear me? You can share your question and comment with us. John William, you're back. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
All right, so let's do a brief, John.
Thank you so much. My name is John William Otim from Uganda. I'm from Nkumba University. My question is that at the beginning of the pandemic, the local person, especially the African, was so much scared by the way the news was coming. However, as if events were developing, a number of activities have come in where it has been looked at in some countries and some societies as a political aspect, as the people are so much active in fighting and promoting the activities of the pandemic are mainly politicians, where events such as corruption and so on, for maybe the funds that were collected on any occasion have been swindled by some of these politicians. Now, as academicians, what direction and how are we going to help the local person understand that the real aspect is a disease, not a political event? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, William. I'll move quickly to Dr. Aaron to share his bit about this concern, and then we'll take it from the studio. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for this type of concern. This is not a political event. When it started first in the United States itself, we all got panic, but we took it lightly because we've not seen things of something of this nature before. It was later on that it started killing people massively that we also gave, high ups to the situation of the pandemic. And even up to now, we have been trying to do a lot of research. Look at a first world country. Now we've been trying to do a lot of research to make sure that things are brought under control. Now, we spend a lot on that. I would expect that and the same thing goes out around the world, that Africans, we also have to develop a process by which we move this thing forward, not only relying on the COVAX, maybe suppliers, because they're doing that for so many countries. So what they might give to Africa might not be enough. We have to help ourselves. We have to push the process forward and make sure that this thing is working very well. Matter of fact, if we have Africa leaders coming together, taking seriousness about this COVAX, is because the variant, we had two already, chances are that we're gonna have more. So we have to put in a lot of research, and Africa will have to help itself. Honestly, Africa, we have to help ourselves, even though we also rely on maybe foreign aid. If US is supposed to give something, at least we also have to prepare ourselves. Thank you.
Everyone, Tetteh-Ahinakwa, for your response. I would say that all our participants should bear with us because of our time economy. We would have to move on to our next two speakers to present. And afterwards, we're going to take all questions and comments at that point. So please bear with us as we proceed with our event. And as you follow, I believe that you have a chance to share your question with us after the next two presentations. So the first one, or the next one, is demystifying the myth surrounding the laboratory development and accident theory. Again, demystifying the myth surrounding the laboratory development and accident theory of the COVID-19 virus. And we'll have Miss Doris Emakaili, a medical lab scientist and health initiative for safety and stability in Africa, Nigeria. Miss Doris Emakaili, if you can hear me, you can take over and then share with us your bit.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be on this platform. And I really want to thank the organizers for putting up this webinar together. It's really a great one. So I'll be talking on, I have some slides that I would love to share with everyone. So I do hope you can hear me, because I really don't know, like my network is fluctuating over here. Can you hear me, please?
We can hear you perfectly.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So let me quickly share my slide. Please just give me a moment. So can you see my slides? Sorry. Can you see my slide, please?
Yes, Doris. Yes, Doris, it's fine.
Okay, all right.
I think you can put it on presentation mode.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Slide. Okay. All right. Thank you. So once again, I'm Doris Emekaili, and I will be talking on demystifying the myths surrounding the laboratory development and accident theory. Sorry, just a moment, please.
Yes.
Yeah, you can go on, please. You can go on.
Okay. All right. So I will be talking on demystifying the myths surrounding the laboratory development and accident theory. And this is an overview of what this webinar will cover. I will want to talk about an overview of the coronavirus itself. What are some of the concepts of emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases? And what are some of the causes? What is genetic engineering? And then I will also want to try to explore some of the myths surrounding the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The coronavirus, as we all know, belongs to the Nidoviridae family of Coronaviridae. It has the subfamily Coronavirinae, and then it has three genus. We have the Alpha coronavirus, the Beta coronavirus, the Gamma coronavirus. Now we have 7 human coronaviruses, 2 from the Alpha coronavirus, that's the HCOV-229E, the HCOV NL63, and then we also have 5 coronaviruses from the Beta coronavirus that have been known to infect man. Recent is the SARS-CoV-2 that just emerged in 2019. An overview of the structure of the coronavirus. It is a medium-sized virus, but studies have shown that it has one of the largest mRNA genome. It is an enveloped positive sense single-stranded RNA virus. It has a lipid bilayer. The lipid bilayer, it makes it easily destructible with soap. That's why you see the government encouraging people, okay, always wash your hands with water and soap and all that. It encodes for 4 or 5 structural proteins, the M protein, also the N protein, the S protein, the E proteins. All these proteins play a major role in the viral replication of the virus in a particular host. Now, the S protein helps to mediate receptor binding. That's the S protein over here. The N protein helps viral RNA synthesis and also helps to interact with the M protein during budding. Now, what do we know about the COVID-19 pandemic or the COVID-19 virus itself? It's a new strain of the coronavirus that first emerged in Hubei province in China in late 2019. The coronaviruses belong to a large family of viruses that cause common cold in humans. And rarely new strains of coronavirus can migrate from animals to humans to cause infection. With cases like we saw the cases of SARS in 2003. We also have cases of the Middle East respiratory syndrome that occurred in 2012. These all were first isolated in animals, but later moved to humans and were able to cause tremendous infection among the human population. And like I said earlier, there are about 7 strains of coronavirus that infects humans. And at a point, the most publicized of them all was the SARS, that's the bad SARS that caused the severe acute respiratory syndrome. Now, coronaviruses primarily infect the upper respiratory tract and gastrointestinal tract of humans and mammals. This is what really makes them very important, because not all viruses can affect both tracts, as seen with the coronavirus. Now, we also know that the spread of the coronavirus is through respiratory droplets, which could be in the form of cough or sneeze and all. Then we know for a fact that it is similar to the seasonal flu. That's why when people get to, they just keep thinking, oh, maybe I'm down with flu, or I have cold, it's nothing serious. And if proper attention is not given to those persons, you see, it could result to something very deadly, as much as having pneumonia or respiratory failures. Cases may be infectious just before symptoms appear, as well as with minimal or no symptoms. We have cases where people are symptomatic, and people also are not symptomatic. Like some people show symptoms, others do not show symptoms, but they are infected with the COVID virus, but do not even show any symptoms. Then we have those that obviously have a lot of symptoms. Now, majority of cases seem to have milder diseases, while others have severe disease. Severe case of the COVID-19 infection could lead to pneumonia, like I said earlier, and also respiratory failures. Death has also been recorded among adults and children. This slide gives an overview of the life cycle of the coronavirus, from the point of attachment to the host, to the point of penetration into the host cell, to maturation, and also release of the infective material for community transmission. I wouldn't want to dwell so much on this. Now, what is the concept of emerging and re-emerging disease? Now, I'm going to want to talk about what emerging diseases are, and what non-emerging diseases are. Now, emerging infectious diseases are diseases that have recently appeared within a population, or those whose incidence rate in a geographic area is rapidly increasing, and if not handled properly, could threaten the population in the near future. So example of such is the SARS-CoV-2, which we are dealing with. If the government do not come out to find a way to stop the spread of the SARS-CoV-2, if it just left alone like that, it could affect a larger population. It could even cause more havoc than what it has done now. Now, since the 1970s up to date, about over 40 infectious diseases have been discovered. This includes the SARS, this includes the Ebola in most African countries, the the swine flu, the Zika virus itself, and then recently the COVID-19 that we are all experiencing in most parts of the world. Now, I also want to talk about what re-emerging infectious diseases are, because all these play a role in being able to demystify some of the myths that people have about the coronavirus. Now, re-emerging diseases have diseases that are of known origin. At a point in time, they have they were once predominant in a certain area or in a certain location, and after a period of time, they died off, and the government or the public health itself decided that they were no longer of public health issues. And then you later see these diseases again coming back to cause infection. An example of such could be cholera in some African countries also, the dengue fever, and cases of diphtheria infection. Now, what are some of the causes of why do infectious disease emerge or re-emerge again? We see rapid and intense international travel. Man is known to travel a lot. You see people moving from Africa to other parts of the world, from Europe to other parts of the world, from point A to point B. Man is always moving around the world. And in all this movement, during this movement, man can transfer infection from point A to point B. Now we also see economic development and land use because the economy in most countries are booming. A lot of lands are being destroyed, and you see deforestation taking place. This has made animals come closer to humans to look for food, to get a source of feeding. Now you also see human demographic and behavior. You also see man itself going into the wild to either for research purposes and coming into contact with more wild animals. We see overcrowding in cities with poor sanitation, and also increased exposures of humans to disease vectors and reservoirs. And then we see breakdown of public health measures when a country health system cannot cater for the needs of the population. Infections are bound to emerge and re-emerge. Then there's also microbial adaptation and change. And also there's also the deliberate introduction of viruses into man or plants or humans. We can see in case for bioterrorism purposes, as we saw in the case with anthrax, the tularemia virus and all. Now, what is genetic engineering? Because a lot of people hold the myth that the SARS-CoV-2 was genetically modified. So I'm going to want to explain what genetic engineering is all about. Now, it is the artificial manipulation, modification, and recombination of DNA or other nucleic acid molecules in order to modify an organism or population of organisms. Now, genetic engineering has done a lot of good to science as a whole, to medicine as a whole. This technique has led to the development of medically important products, such as human insulin for treatment of diabetic patients, human growth hormones, hepatitis B vaccines, as well as being able to develop plants or livestock that are resistant to some organisms. Now, I want to look at the myths surrounding the SARS-CoV-2 itself. Now, I want to look at the lab leak hypothesis, which says that some lab link proponents contend that the virus contains an unusual feature that suggests that it was genetically modified. Some say that the SARS-CoV-2 spread so easily amongst humans that it has to be bioengineered for that specific purpose. Others also hold the opinion that almost a year and a half into the pandemic, that the SARS-CoV-2 closest relative still hasn't been found in animals. Now, others also suggest that it is no coincidence that the COVID-19 was first detected in Wuhan, where we have a group of researchers that were studying the coronavirus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Others also hold the opinion that the SARS-CoV-2 was derived from unused mine, where these researchers were collecting samples from bats between 2012 and 2015. So I'm going to try as much as possible to try to demystify all these myths that we have listed here. Now, the first one I'm going to try to answer is those that believe that the SARS-CoV-2 was genetically modified so that it could spread so easily among humans. Now, several researchers have looked into whether the features of the SARS-CoV-2 signal was bioengineered. And one of the first teams to do so was led by Kristen Anderson, who is a virologist at Scripps Research in La Jolla, California. They were able to determine that it was improbable that the SARS-CoV-2 emerged through laboratory manipulation of a related COVID-like coronavirus. Now, what these people carrying the myth are talking about is that the receptor binding domain, which is located on the S protein of the coronavirus, is prone to genetic mutation, and they feel that because this that part of the coronavirus is prone to genetic mutation, it has to have been man-made to be able to do that. Now, they also believe that because this SARS-CoV-2 could easily spread within a few meters to infect other people, it also means that it was genetically modified. Now, what the ROBD of the SARS-CoV does is that it helps the virus itself to bind to the human cell. And other studies have shown that it is not only the SARS-CoV-2 that has this ROBD in the spike. Further slides will also show that pangolins have the same ROBD, and they can also bind easily with humans if exposed. So early cases of the COVID-19 also were leaked to human markets, and the scientists believe that an animal source had to be present in that location to be able to transmit this virus from humans or from the animal itself to human. So debunking the myths concerning that it was bioengineered. The scientists also tried to look at the genome of the SARS-CoV-2 to see if there is any genetic signature that indicates that this was man-made.
Hello, Doc. You have
a lot of
5 minutes to wrap up, please.
Okay, a lot of study also showed that there is no linkage between the SARS-CoV-2 to any known SARS-like coronavirus in existence. So which also suggests that this SARS-CoV-2 was not biologically engineered. Now, we also have those who say, okay, it is suspicious. We haven't found the SARS-CoV-2 in any human, in any animal. Now, it took about 14 years before scientists could nail down the origin of the SARS epidemic to bats. So outbreak origin investigation usually takes years, and so I feel it is too quick for us to conclude, for them to conclude that, oh, this has not been linked to any animal. Ebola itself, that has caused a lot of deaths in African countries, still hasn't been isolated from any animals in date. So the difficulty is that the researchers will find the right animals before it dies or before that infection clears off. And we know it's very difficult to be able to get a particular animal that has that infection in them. Even WHO carried out a report into the origin of the COVID-19. And they concluded that it is unlikely that the coronavirus escaped from a lab at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And then that most scientists also believe that this conclusion made by the WHO is actually true, that the SARS itself must have spilled from animals into humans, and it is possible through mutation. Now, this is the beauty of mutation. Over time, an organism can mutate from animals and move into man. And by the time it moves into another host, it becomes more virulent. It takes some attributes from both the progenitor and the human host, so making it sometimes difficult for scientists to find a cure to them, such that we're finding it very difficult to produce a cure to the coronavirus. Now, also for those who hold the myth that it was first detected in Wuhan, so therefore the Chinese should be held responsible for this. A lot of research has also gone into studies to show that in most countries where a new viral infection tends to develop, it is known that if there are any institute of virology there, they want to always concentrate on that virus to find out, oh, why did this happen? Is there something we're doing in the community that made this to occur? Or can we trace this back to this and that? So there is no direct proof to show that it was caused by these researchers. Neither is there any direct proof to prove that it was from the unused mine that the scientists were collecting samples from. So in conclusion, from all the research, available research that has been made thus far, research are still going on to ascertain the origin of the SARS-CoV-2. But thus far, from all the research made available, the SARS-CoV-2 is not biological bioengineered, but is an emerging infectious disease. And there are still no direct proof linking it to the various myth theories as discussed in this webinar. These are my references, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Doris, Ms. Doris Emakaili, for your presentation. Let me just do a quick one to dilute our Q&A by telling you the questions that some of the comments our participants have put forth.
Okay.
These concerns should be taken into note respectively, so that when we are done with the second presentation, you can answer to them. So I'll begin with Omolara Otujo Ngo with the early childhood care education. And she says that, what are we doing to prepare vaccines for young children, knowing that some of them are contacting the virus?
Okay.
Abdul Hakim Awesu is saying that, what is the justification for booster doses when the current variant is not susceptible to the current vaccines? So what is the booster doses when the current variant is not susceptible to the current vaccines? From Fletcher Fury, this is one of the myths that current vaccines are not working, when we have seen the positive impact of these vaccines on death, hospital admissions, and sickness. I believe this comes from failure to understand the role of vaccines. From Fletcher. From Uchechukwu Ude James, he's asking, why is it that governments are making vaccinations compulsory even when vaccine is being proven not to guarantee absolute safety and does not prevent transmission? And what is AAU doing to check the coercive approach by some African governments? So I think respective respondents should just keep this in notes and respond to them after the second presentation is done. From David Atoli, says, please, we have heard and read about blood clots with regards to the vaccine, and what accounts for this, considering the process the vaccine goes through? From Albert Mukandani, where are AAU in COVID-19? Born in chaos of COVID-19 pandemic, moving in integration of vaccine innovation, centered amidst laboratories dynamic, waiting for application licenses. So where is the AAU in all of these entanglements? It's a question from Albert Mukandani. From Millicent Champon, says, we Africans have a long way to go. I think that our researchers in the area of biochemistry should join forces with and contact big research institutions like Noguchi at the University of Ghana in Ghana, and other institutes both in Ghana and all over Africa to develop vaccines accepted globally. And I'll have this. So let's do a quick one with our next speaker, who is the person of Miss Jessica Huang, a researcher of Meedan Digital Health Lab, USA. Jessica, if you can hear me, you can go ahead with your presentation. Miss Jessica. So Jessica, you have 10 minutes to share your presentation on demystifying the myths surrounding the mRNA DNA conspiracy theory. So if Jessica is on, you could go ahead.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Jessica.
If the host can also please enable screen sharing, that would enable me to share my slides. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've been asked to speak as a public health professional on health misinformation and disinformation related to mRNA vaccines. As we all know, during an infodemic like this, it's really important to understand our sources so that we can critically evaluate information for ourselves. So I just wanted to provide full disclosure that my doctorate is in public health. I research health education and misinformation. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm also not an expert in vaccine development or genetics. So I just wanted to make sure that you know what my expertise actually lies in and that I'm not trying to misrepresent my expertise. So I'm happy to field questions specifically around misinformation related to the mRNA vaccines interacting with DNA. My other disclaimer is that while I've previously worked with the Meedan Digital Health Lab and their Health Desk project, I'm not a representative of the organization, so all opinions are of course my own. That said, it is a wonderful project that tries to put public health expertise in the service of journalists, so I really encourage you to check out that research. It's health-desk.org. So the context that we're in is that we're not just fighting in an epidemic or pandemic, we're in the midst of an infodemic with misinformation and disinformation spreading faster and more quickly sometimes than the virus itself. And as we all know, the wrong information can be deadly. So this is a really urgent threat. It not only causes confusion and mistrust, but it can actually impact people's health. So thank you all for engaging in this really important topic. And thanks especially to the organizers for putting this together. Just some foundational information so we're all on the same page. I'm sure this is a review for most, if not all of you. DNA is a double-stranded molecule that carries the genetic information that's responsible for the development and function of us as humans, for example, as well as other organisms. RNA is different. It's single-stranded, and it would carry the genetic information for organisms like RNA viruses. So an example of an RNA virus would be the coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, which is what causes the disease COVID-19. So this is different than DNA. And then we have messenger RNA, also known as mRNA, and this directs cells to make proteins. This is being used in the mRNA vaccines for COVID-19, but also please note that our own cells in the human body also contain mRNA to be able to synthesize proteins. So it's not anything to be scared of. This is just a little bit of the basics. And as we all know, mRNA vaccines are safe and effective based on a lot of data that has been continued to be gathered over time. Even though these COVID-19 vaccines are new, mRNA vaccination technology has actually been developed over decades by hundreds of scientists. You can verify this by searching academic databases like Google Scholar to see the papers that have been developed on this over time. And this work has enabled us to be able to respond quickly to situations like the COVID-19 pandemic and be able to create vaccines specific to this virus as quickly as possible. The mRNA vaccines by Pfizer and Moderna have gone through rigorous clinical testing, as we all know, and the regulatory approval processes are also quite rigorous, and it has gone through this in many places around the world. At least hundreds of millions of people have safely received the mRNA vaccine at least a dose, if not a full course of the doses, which has helped to reduce transmission rates of COVID-19 as well as reduce hospitalization and death. The mRNA vaccines basically instruct our cells to make a harmless piece of the virus's spike protein. So this in and of itself cannot give us the disease COVID-19 because it's not actually the virus. It teaches our body's immune system to recognize and defend against the virus without ever actually having to be exposed to the virus. So it's just a little bit of the basics of why these vaccines are safe and effective. As we are discussing today, there has been some misinformation and disinformation about the mRNA vaccines interacting with DNA. However, the vaccines cannot interact with DNA, and we'll go over some of the scientific reasons for why. So first and foremost, the mRNA from COVID-19 vaccines can't actually cross the nuclear membrane into the cell nucleus where our DNA is located. So analogy for this is imagining a lock where there's no key. So the mRNA cannot cross into our cell nucleus, so they can't reach our DNA and they cannot interact with our DNA. Even if it somehow got into our cell nucleus, which we know that it cannot, but even if it got in there, we still are missing the enzyme that would be needed to reverse transcribe RNA to DNA. So imagine this would be like speaking different languages without a translator. So even if the mRNA got into our cell nucleus, which it cannot, it's not the same as DNA. Even if there were somehow introduced the enzyme that would enable the mRNA to be transcribed to DNA, we are still missing the enzyme that would be needed to integrate with the body's DNA. So imagine separate pieces that can't be connected, right? So one, mRNA cannot cross the membrane into the cell nucleus where our DNA is located, not from the vaccine. And even if it got in there, it's not going to be able to interact with the DNA because it's RNA. And then even if it got reverse transcribed to DNA, we're still missing the enzyme needed to integrate it with our body's DNA. So for multiple reasons, mRNA vaccines actually cannot interact with DNA. What's more, the mRNA from COVID-19 vaccines only last up to a couple of days in the human body. Some estimates are less than 72 hours. So because it disintegrates so quickly, again, it's just really not going to be able to permanently alter your DNA. But we do know that the misinformation that's been spreading has been citing various sources, sometimes unfortunately misusing the studies that exist. So for example, some claims have been misusing a preprint study by researchers affiliated with MIT. However, if you look carefully at the study and not just at the title of the study actually does not provide evidence that the mRNA can permanently alter our DNA. And the study has now since gone from a preprint to a fully published article and has been challenged by other researchers. So just want to put out there that just because you see something citing something, again, we need to check our sources and dig into it for ourselves. And then here are just some of the resources that I use to draw these key points. And then I encourage you to take a look as additional resources for you. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through the next slides a bit more quickly, even though there's a lot of text, but I'm happy to share the slides. This is more coming now from the perspective of why this misinformation might be spreading and what we can do together to help address it, because I really hope that we can work together to focus our energy on how to address this pandemic, how to save lives, how to improve our economies versus fighting over misinformation. So some of the factors that might be contributing to the spread of this particular misinformation around mRNA vaccines interacting with DNA might be political. So for example, some governments are working on non-mRNA vaccines and might have motivations for, or either companies or governments or different parties might have motivations for trying to reduce trust in mRNA vaccines in the interest of promoting another vaccine. There can be a lot of social pressures. So if you're part of a group that has been questioning this, it can be hard to raise some of the pieces of evidence that you might be finding, even if you're not seeing the evidence that people are claiming about this myth of mRNA vaccines interacting with DNA. And then, of course, in a pandemic, there's a lot of psychological factors. It's very hard for us as humans to feel this loss of control, this uncertainty. So sometimes it's very human to have the desire to feel that we know something special, and it can make us more susceptible to conspiracy theories. There's been some research on this as well. So just reasons to keep in mind for why this misinformation might be spreading. And it's dangerous because it leads to vaccine hesitancy, eroded trust in public health and safety recommendations, and then of course, worse health outcomes and potentially even lives lost. So it's something that hopefully we can work together to address. One of the ways that we can do this is by building health literacy. So this is often defined as the degree to which someone can obtain, read, understand, and use health information to make appropriate health decisions. So you can draw an analogy to literacy, where when you show somebody how to read, it's more than just about a passive intake of information. People who are literate can actively make decisions based on what they read. They can share what they learn and impact the decisions of others. They can create new content, for example. And so health literacy is quite important. It's not just about passive interaction with health information. It's about the actual informed decisions that we can then make that not only benefit our own health, but the health of our families and of course, society at large. Some other lessons learned in addressing health misinformation are, of course, we need to have the right message given by the right messenger through the right medium at the right time, right? All of this relates to having messages that are accessible, relevant, that we feel like we can trust because they're coming from people and sources that we trust. So some of the things that can help with this are localization. So by this, I don't just mean translating into a local language, but actually paying attention to the context and the audience and what issues are going to matter most to people and resonate most with people. We want to aim for understandability, not necessarily oversimplification. Sometimes we can really trust that people have the ability to sort through information for themselves. Sometimes people want additional information. We just have to make sure that it is understandable. But by oversimplifying stuff, there can be risks to that too. How can we create a more transparent process, demystifying how science is done and how journalists are reporting on that so that people can trust this and be able to navigate the information that's being presented? And of course, empathy and humanity are incredibly important. We need to be reducing stigma and increasing conversation. If people feel scared to ask questions because they feel like they might be shamed or not really addressing some of people's concerns, and that can lead to lack of trust and then lack of adoption of important preventative public health measures. And information environments are very social, as we all know, so it's important for us to be collaborating with the right groups to be reaching people. You know, messages are much more effective when they come from groups that people trust and are interacting with. And given that we have limited resources and time, we need to prioritize these risks in a strategic, intentional way based on evidence. So for example, sometimes we need to triage the misinformation that's out there based on its potential for harm, speed at which it's spreading, the scope, the capacity that we might even have to address that misinformation. We might want to consider when we're going to amplify something versus work quietly and choose a path of strategic silence to avoid generating more attention around a piece of misinformation. And we need to be more proactive in our monitoring and response. And finally, well, this is of course not finally because there's many other things to consider, but I just wanted to highlight that it is really important to protect the digital first responders that are out there responding to misinformation and disinformation campaigns. We really need to be ensuring their mental health and well-being, their safety, and of course, their sustainability to work on this issue over time. And I should also clarify at this point, sorry that I did not do so earlier, that while a lot of this is lessons learned from my work addressing health misinformation, there's misinformation that might be spreading more organically, as well as coordinated disinformation campaigns by malicious actors. And so your response might be slightly different if you know it's a coordinated campaign. You might want to be identifying that source and coming up with strategies to combat that. So there is some difference there that might matter. Oops, just trying to reach the next slide. Sorry about that. Oops. Okay, so to address all this, we need a multitude of skill sets. The WHO, the World Health Organization, has this great analogy calling infodemic managers unicorns because there's just so many different skills that somebody may need. But one way to consider this is how can we draw upon a community like this one that's gathered here today with expertise from so many different fields so we can learn from health communications, crisis communications, behavioral science, content moderation and come together to put our skills together to be addressing misinformation, disinformation, and ultimately helping us all get through the pandemic together. So with that, I just wanted to thank you all for engaging with this topic. Feel free to reach out if you want to continue the conversation, and I look forward to continuing the discussion with you all. Thank you.
Sika, for your great presentation, also with your very interesting introduction that went by saying that we're not actually at war with just a pandemic, but rather infodemic, because lots of misinformations are just making headways out there, and we are at crossroads, either to go with the fact or go with the myth. So thank you very much for your presentation. And at this point, we'll now have to bring back our Q&A questions and answers. But I'm going to read to you latest questions and comments we've got, and I believe you actually made note of the previous questions that were announced. So if this one is done, then perhaps you can start answering them per the ones which were directed to you or your area. So this is from Lydia Mwangi saying, thank you for the information and updates on the myth related to COVID-19 coronavirus. People are still scared and with misreception and reactions on vaccination, mostly on reproductive health issues. So to whom it may concern on the platform, you can answer this. And from George Nasiyama, a comment he's making here says, trust in scientific discoveries and scientific expertise has been put to question by the public as a result of increasing influence by politicians that is likely to slow down progress in human development globally. Decisions must be based on science and not misinformation. So now the floor is opened for answers to the questions that I shared earlier on. Allow me to just add these ones from Professor Joseph Deneke Belachiu saying, do you really think that the lab leak theory is wrong? It's a question from Professor Joseph. And from Isabella saying, as the virus keeps on mutating, I mean, Bella's with me in the studio, as the virus keeps mutating, should scientists think of coming up with newer vaccines to fight the new strains? And from Ganiyu Bello has a very interesting question, and you want to hear. Says, how do we handle opposition to vaccine by some religious groups? Very interested. I know you bear with me. So if you heard the questions, Dr. Aaron is here with us, Jessica is here, and also Madam Doris is here. We also have other speakers with us, but if you have an answer to any of the questions, you can just share with us quickly by unmuting yourself. Thank you very much.
Sure, I'm happy to start by addressing one of the
So you can
first
go ahead
questions.
if you have. Jessica, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So thank you all for your very important questions and for engaging in this topic. I heard one of the questions that was read off was around fertility. I'm just going to post into here a link from the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, that encourages people who are planning for pregnancy to take the vaccine. There's no evidence at this time that COVID-19 vaccines can impact fertility, and what's more, we really need to make sure that we're protecting the pregnant women and the young child from COVID-19, the disease. And so it is quite important that people are vaccinated if they're planning to start a family. And then we also know that contracting the COVID-19 disease can have very negative health impacts as well that may make it more challenging to start a family. So for that reason as well, it may be far better to get the vaccine, for example, than to have COVID-19. I also saw a question on how we can work with different religious groups. I think this is very important, and there's been some efforts currently. For example, the Pope and the Catholic Church have been doing some things to try to address some of the pieces of misinformation around the pandemic. So there's potential to work with religious leaders to try to get information out there that's going to protect the members of their religions. They might have an interest in working together with scientists and science communicators to get information out to people in their religious groups. So I hope that we can be working together rather than unfortunately, causing more mistrust and then having people perpetuate misinformation. And I will stop there while I continue to read the questions in the chat to give the other speakers a chance to respond.
All right. Do we have any of our speakers who wish to provide some answers to the questions read earlier?
Okay. Hi, everyone. It's Doris once again. So I have a question here that says, why don't we have vaccines for children? Well, I wouldn't say there are no vaccines for children because we all know currently, even in America, children are being given the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccines, but basically they are children who are above, say, from 6 years to 12. There are no, I think more clinical trials are still ongoing to ascertain if vaccines will be safer for younger children. And I think by the time they are done with the trials, we would be able to know if children, younger children could possibly take the vaccines. But for those above 12, above 6 years and above, they some have been given the vaccines, and so there are vaccines for children. Then someone also asked why is the government enforcing people to take the vaccine? Now, we believe that despite the fact that the vaccine is not a cure for the coronavirus itself, but we believe that it has in a way helped to reduce the rate at which people get infected with the virus. So I think the government is just trying to do what is best for everyone, help reduce the spread of the coronavirus, help keep the population safe. So I think those are the major reasons why the government is encouraging everyone to take that. But I don't think it's a thing of force. It has to be voluntary. People can decide not to take the vaccine, but then again, you might have restricted movement. They could tell you, okay, without the vaccine, you can't get access to this, you can't travel to this, or you can't do that without the vaccines and all. But in general, I think they are just trying to look for better ways to keep the country or the community safe to at best. Now, someone also asked, why do we take the booster dose when we know that the COVID-19 vaccine, when we know that we keep having new variants? Why do we keep having booster boost? Now, the thing about vaccines is that like we said, the COVID-19 vaccine is not a cure for the coronavirus. What scientists tried to do was use the mRNA of the virus to try to create a vaccine that could help limit the rate at which people get infected, or the rate at which people will react to the virus when they do get infected. So we still need to take the booster boost because vaccines do tend to wear off. You don't just take for example, the hepatitis B vaccine or the hepatitis C vaccine. You don't take it once and then you don't go for it again. It is in Nigeria, you have to go like 3 times to get the booster doses for those vaccines. And we know that after a while, these things wear off. The genetic materials used in making these vaccines do wear off. And you need to take the booster boost to also increase the effectiveness of these vaccines. So that's why it's important for you to take the booster boost of any vaccine that you've started. So I think those are some of the—
Thank you, Doc. Sure. Thank you so much, Doris. I want to also take the very new questions I've gotten, and then we'll have to also put them together and then take the next presentations and then have our final Q&A where they'll all be resolved. So I have this from Bernard Sater, on which he says, on which basis do you think that explaining RNA and DNA would help win adherence to vaccination? A study we conducted in 5 West African countries showed that the main reasons for people not getting vaccinated is that they don't feel threatened by the virus. So this is from Ejeku Success. No, that's from Bedded. I'll take it again. On which basis do you think that explaining RNA and DNA would help adherence to vaccination? A study conducted in 5 countries actually provided that people were not vaccinated because they felt not threatened by the pandemic or the whole pandemic or the virus itself. That's why we think they were not just vaccinated. And then from Ejeku Success says, can an HIV positive woman or HD or AHD take the vaccine? So I hope speakers here who actually are affiliated to the questions can provide answers ahead of time. We'll call you to provide answers to them later on. So I wish to apologize slightly for the extension of time because it's getting very interesting. We would have to also give the opportunity to speakers to explain themselves fully, and also for us to also attach to leave no stone unturned by providing all the information we need. So please forgive us that we may have an extension of time, like 30 minutes more, to ensure that we settle all the myths. So this is just for you to bear with us here at the studio. And a quick one, let me introduce our next presenter, the person of Mr. Charlse Wendo, a science journalist and training coordinator at Science Development, Uganda. And he will be presenting on reporting on pandemics, how to report the science of COVID-19. So, Mr. Charlse Wendo, if you can hear me, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. My microphone has just been unmuted. Thank you for this opportunity, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charlse Wendo. I'm a veterinary doctor who has spent 100 times more time reporting science news than treating animals. And currently I work with the Sci.Dev as the training coordinator. I'll begin with a very quick disclaimer that we vets have been accused of eating our patients, but that is not true. We only eat our potential patients, because once they are patients, then we don't eat them. And secondly, I am speaking more today as a journalist than as a vet. Now, my role with the Sci.Dev as training coordinator is to train journalists on how to report science, and also to train scientists on how to communicate their research. I am based in Kampala, although the organization is based in UK. Thanks to technology, I'm able to work remotely from Kampala. Now, this presentation is aimed at journalists, but again, I would like to say that it is equally useful to the scientists, because the communication of science is inevitably an interdisciplinary process, or even a multidisciplinary process. So if journalists are going to report science right, then they need to work together with scientists. So it is equally important for any scientist that is interested in working with journalists to be part of this discussion. I will very quickly share my presentation. Yes, thankfully that's possible now. Please bear with me for a moment as I go to screen. Okay, slideshow mode, great. That is, there we go. So I will try to go very quickly through the presentation. One, I would like to quickly point out 4 points. That the COVID pandemic is the greatest crisis of our time, so it's important for all of us to pay attention to it. But also to mention that accurate information helps individuals and policymakers to make the right decisions, and that misinformation leads to bad decisions, and these bad decisions can have disastrous consequences, whether they are made at personal or policy level. They can actually lead to death in the extreme. And I also point out here that the media are the main source of information for the public and policy makers on most things, actually, not only on COVID. the biggest source of reliable or credible information. And I will very quickly, before I go deeper, very briefly mention the link between science, the media, and society. And forgive me if I interchange science and research, because the two are very closely connected. So I do mention here that scientists, through the process of scientific research, create knowledge. And how do they do this? They raise questions, they go through a very systematic process of research, and they create knowledge. So through that process, we know what is fact and what is not fact. And then, unfortunately, most people in society will never know about these scientific research findings. And most people actually get to know about scientific research through the media. So research that is not reported in the media will never get known to to most people. And then, both policymakers actually and the general public, they get most of their information through the media, which is why it's important that the media report this. And then the policymakers make policy decisions that affect all of us, but also at individual level, we make personal decisions based on the information that we get, most of them through the media. I am laboring to explain this because, and also I will say a bit more about it in this slide, because a lot of journalists, I have had comments from my colleagues in the media who say it is our job to report news, and it is the job of the health workers to educate the public or to inform the public about health matters. And if you follow the main purpose of journalism, it can be said in very many different ways, but the one that I like most is presented by the American Press Institute. They do say that the main purpose of journalism is to provide citizens with information that they need to make the best possible decisions about their lives, their communities, their societies, and their governments. And these decisions, of course, include decisions about COVID-19. There's nothing more important for us to discuss and make decisions on around this time than COVID-19. But I add a disclaimer here that for the media, the information has to be verified. That is the difference between us in the media and other, there are lots of bogus information circulating on social media, on the internet. The difference between that and the news media is that the news media should go through a process of verification, so that even if people have seen something on social media, they come to the news media to find out if it is indeed true. Now, I point out here 5 qualities of a good health story. I am not saying that COVID-19 is a purely health story. It's a multi-sectoral problem, but there's a lot of, I think the basic or the beginning of it all is health. And very many times, a number of times I've participated as a judge in health journalism awards with different organizations. And these are generally the criteria that they tend to use for determining what are the best stories, what are the award-winning stories. One is it accurate? Is it quoting the right sources? And then secondly, is it relevant to the public and to policymakers? Is it easy to understand? Is it informative? And is it well structured? And above all, possibly one thing I didn't add here is how much effort did the journalist put in trying to get and verify this information? Now, for our purpose today, we are discussing the first point, which is accuracy, which involves getting the facts and opinions from the appropriate sources. I would, with all due respect, a journalist should not go to a professor of chemical, or rather a professor of electrical engineering, to ask for a comment about how RNA vaccines work. The sourcing should be appropriate. We should quote from the right source. And likewise, I wouldn't expect them to go to a politician to get that kind of information. Then 2, it's very important that in all of this process, the journalists take notes. you will be surprised a number of the errors that we get in the media are a result of not taking notes adequately, then quoting sources correctly, and then ensuring that we don't follow the interest. You know, sometimes sources, the people that give us the information might mislead us based on their political or business or religious or cultural interest. So it's important that we look through, we look beyond that, so that we are not duped. And as I get towards the core of the presentation, I want to mention here the sources of information on COVID-19. Like I said before, we need to get the right sources. And to begin with, we need to be in touch with the reputable scientists and quote them. We go to them for information related to their area of specialty, not just getting anyone who is highly educated, and we ask them for information. Then I mentioned here that press releases are very good, but I mentioned here that it is a good starting point. A press release should never ever be the whole story. It is a starting point. If I had time, I would have projected a study that shows that many times the errors, sometimes we see some errors in the news, on health stories in the news media. And some of those health mistakes actually come from the press releases. Sometimes press releases carry exaggerations, or in some cases even misinformation about scientific research findings. So even after looking at the press release, we should look at the original source, the original research paper. And then I mentioned also here that published research studies in reputable journals. And I emphasis on published, because there are many people who carry out research. They have not followed the correct research procedures. The methodology is not correct. The interpretation of results is not correct. And then they try to release that information. Now, with published research, we know that there is a peer review process, that it may not be 100%, but it will to a large extent weed out the potentially problematic research studies. And then also I mentioned that technical reports, we need to rely on technical reports from reputable institutions. Again, for reasons I mentioned earlier, there are some institutions that may want to mislead you by producing a technical report that is misleading. So we need to rely on reputable institutions. And then research databases are very important. I have seen journalists, my colleagues in the media, that just go to Wikipedia and get information. I am not saying Wikipedia is bad, but I'm saying Wikipedia is a good starting point. But until today, you will actually get some information that is not credible on Wikipedia. So for if we are to report the science of COVID-19, we need to search for that information from research databases, and not necessarily just a general Google search or going to Wikipedia. Then I mentioned here, I project here some examples of research databases, and this list is by no means exhaustive. There are many databases out there that are credible. There's the WHO COVID-19 database, there's PubMed, there's COVID evidence, and so on. So all of these you can, and others, you just need to establish that, is this a credible database? That is a lot better than just doing a general Google search or going to Wikipedia. Then I mentioned here that it's very important to do fact checking. It's very important to fact check. A lot of bogus information is circulating on social media, on the internet. Some of them actually disseminated by people who on the surface seem to be credible, credible sources of information, but perhaps they have ulterior motives, or perhaps they are just not careful enough to sort out the correct information. I will give you a quick example. I think many people in this webinar would have come across a video on social media that someone was claiming was the Minister of Health in Thailand fearing a COVID injection. Now, if you do a simple fact check, then you realize that this man who was fearing the injection in that video is actually a random Chinese man, not the Minister of Health in Thailand, but a random Chinese man who is fearing an injection, not a COVID, not the COVID jab. It's just the regular, the usual kind of injections, a therapeutic injection that people are given in hospital. I don't know whether it was an antibiotic or whatever it is, but it wasn't a COVID vaccine, and it wasn't the Minister of Health of Thailand. So with just simple fact checking, you can weed out a lot of the bogus information. And I point out here a few online sites where you can fact check. And again, I am saying this list is by no means exhaustive. There are other fact checkers that I didn't capture here. Then as we proceed towards the end of this discussion, this presentation rather, I point out a few practical tips. That one, let's avoid false balance. In the media, there's the belief that we need to have a balanced story. If someone is having an opinion in this direction, then you get another person with an opinion in another direction, and then you have a balanced story. Now, when it comes to reporting the science of COVID-19, that very easily becomes false balance, because you see, it is either factual or not. It is either true or false. And how do we know it is factual? I think Professor Aaron told us a little bit in the beginning about how the scientific research on vaccines is done. Basically, he was telling us that there is a scientific process. There is what we call the scientific method that scientific research follows. And through that process, we are able to know what is factual and what is not factual. That process provides the evidence. So if someone has gone through that process to provide credible evidence, and another person is saying, no, that cannot be true. Now, the one that is saying that cannot be true has no form of evidence whatsoever. I wouldn't put those two on the same platform. One person has evidence, the other one has no evidence. So if you try to balance between the two, that would be false balance. So what I would say here is that let's avoid giving undue space to scientists who are known to propagate false information or unfounded opinions. The second thing I would say here is that we need to create some what I would call repeatable key facts. In the newspaper, we used to call them boiler points. That is a paragraph on each topic that you want to write about. And then each time you write about that topic, you bring back this paragraph. In journalism, we are allowed to, in every news article or feature article or news bulletin, we are allowed to put, for every news item, you are allowed to put in some background information, as long as the new information is more than the background information. That is allowed. Background helps your audiences to perceive the story better. And it's a good trick to know some basic facts, which you write you create a paragraph that you keep bringing back. Now, that's one of the ways to defeat misinformation. If you have the correct information and you keep repeating it in every story that you write about, that is a good trick. Now, in summary, I say that the media have an important role to disseminate accurate information, and this accurate information should ideally help people to make informed decisions, whether personal decisions or policy decisions. That's one. And two, it's important to get information from the appropriate sources. We all heard about INFODEMICS. We as journalists should not be contributing to misinfodemics by providing the wrong information. And sometimes we unknowingly provide the wrong information by going to the wrong sources for that information. So we need to be very careful about where we get our information. Number three, it's important to fact check. It's important when you get new information. A lot of this information comes in and sounds very exciting, but it's important that before you proceed, you do fact checking. And just finally, I need to point out there are two learning resources here that that were produced by Sci.Dev. I'm actually the author of these two. There is a practical guide on how to report the science of COVID-19. And our observation is that people take on average 4 to 5 minutes to read this practical guide. So for any journalist, it's a very useful 5 minutes to spend learning some basics on how to report the science of COVID-19. And then we do have a free online course, again, which I authored, that about reporting the science of COVID-19. It has three modules. It has 3 modules, and one module is on basic information about COVID-19, understanding the epidemic and why it might not even be the last pandemic of its kind. And 2, we have on sources of information, and 3, we have how to package or structure a COVID-19 story. Now, again, our observation is that people are spending on average 1 hour per module. So if you have 3 modules and you're spending 1 hour per module, so that's about a total of 3 hours of learning. But it's a very useful, it's 3 hours very well spent. You may find that some of the information is, especially in module 1, some of the information may be overtaken by events because there's new information coming up every day on COVID-19. But most of the course is actually is timeless. The information doesn't change with time. So again, I would like to say thank you very much to the organizers and to everyone who has joined this webinar. In a short while, I am going to share the links to those two, to the practical guide and to the online course in the Zoom chat.
Our next speaker is Miss Jubiel M. Zulu. She is a science journalist at Kwithu FM in Zambia. And still on reporting on pandemics, she's going to share her experience on reporting facts on COVID-19. Miss Zulu, please, if you're online, you can unmute yourself and then go on.
Thank you so much for having me. So far so good. We have had a lot of issues that have been raised and have been ably dealt with. Now, I'd like to share my presentation. Just tell me if you're able to see. Okay, great. So my name is Jubiel Zulu. I'm from Kwithu FM. I'm a science journalist, and I am actually talking to you over understanding the myths on science of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Now, I like saying that I have a different understanding of what science journalism, of course, what others would say put together, and what I deem it to be fit. So my understanding is that science journalism is the gathering and dissemination of information to a wider group on the physical world. So this is due to the impact of knowledge and understanding on natural and social world using a systematic method based on evidence. So its process includes learning and validating information according to the evidence provided each day. So I take each day to come up with a logical and systematic conclusion, and I use every day to come up with an observation, experiment, experience, analyze, and verify. So science communication is neither stressful nor easy, but it demands for certain works to be performed in a certain period of time. It also is working at times with relevant authorities that might be available to offer content. And this means that a communicator like me, as a journalist, needs to come up with a plan B or X in order to ensure that information is disseminated. Now, we have had a scenario in Zambia where we have had this disease burden. Like in 2017, we had HIV leading cause of death, accounting to 24% in Zambia, and non-communicable diseases resulting to death. Some of the lifestyle that people have continued, which consist of lifestyle of drinking alcohol, tobacco usage, and health diets, and also lack of exercises. And now these deaths altogether accounts to 29% of all the total deaths that we do have in the country. And then in 2019, we saw an increase in malaria cases, the greatest killer in sub-Saharan Africa. It's still happening in other countries. And COVID-19 was one of the things that we saw in 2020. Coming to 2021, we saw COVID-19, maternal mortality, diarrhea cases, cancer, TB, and HIV and AIDS. So those are the leading cause of death. Now, coming to COVID-19, we see that it was in March 2020 when we received the sad news of the patients who were a Zambian couple of Lusaka. The woman was 37 and the man was 39-year-old, who returned to Lusaka from a 10-day holiday in France abroad on Emirates flight. That was on the 15th of March 2020. That was when we came to know about the virus, that it has actually been recorded in Zambia. Now, immediately after the news, we saw social media was flagged with the couple's photos. Discrimination started, stigma, under terms, isolation was also misplaced. We saw audios, videos claiming that it was a plot to kill Africans, and that was widely shared. And the confirmation of the first case of COVID-19 in Zambia triggered rampant misinformation and disinformation, all including the myths. Now, some of the myths that we have encountered includes various herbal concoctions that have been used or are still continuing being used to say that they can actually cure COVID-19. And we have also seen abuse of malaria drugs and others to treat COVID-19. Now, this has led to the impulse buying over the counter and shortage of drugs, despite it being not the official drug to use. More people, the other myth is that others are thinking that more people are dying are those that are vaccinated, when in fact science is telling us that those with underlying conditions and unvaccinated are some of the people that are dying. Now, others are also thinking that drinking alcohol cures or prevents COVID-19, of which we all know that drinking alcohol doesn't cure or prevent COVID-19. But in fact, drinking alcohol can weaken your immune system, which gives you or maybe helps you to be more prone to contracting COVID-19. So others are also thinking, looking at the scenario that Zambia has had, only the rich can contract COVID-19. And so anyone, the science says that anyone can get COVID-19 regardless of how much money you have. And people have also continued to think that COVID-19 cannot be passed on in a warm, sunny weather, just as we are having here in Zambia. But the fact of the matter is that you can get COVID-19 no matter how sunny or warm it is. So exposing oneself to the sun or high temperatures does not prevent one or treat COVID-19. And still, others are still thinking that those with underlying conditions do not have to take these vaccines. But then again, science is telling us that many of the COVID-19 vaccine trials have been included, and these consist of people living with HIV. And so far, the results show that vaccines are safe for people living with HIV and AIDS. They can take them, even those that are having underlying conditions. Actually, it helps them to even counter COVID-19 symptoms when they get to face it. Now, some of the challenges that I have faced and what my friends have also continued to face is that information is not readily available. And some of the available information is too scientific or too technical, and then it becomes difficult for journalists to unpack. Then there's also absence of legitimate sources that gives rise to fake news and misinformation as people turn to social media platforms for information. So if information is not actually gotten from the Ministry of Health, then others cannot comment, of which something must be done to ensure that people, like the coordinator, like the trainer has said, we need to find people that speak to their different professionals that can actually tell us more about this. A few scientists available as Casey to share information, especially when they work under a certain organization. So you find that they would tell you that you need to actually ask the executive director, or go and ask the peer to give you information on who is going to speak. And that means that time is running out and fake news continues to spread as we are doing that. So stories are also not gathered in a hasty period, but it requires ample time for you to actually have that information. And the other thing is that journalists are not usually trusted. So this requires that more effort has to come from the journalists to prove themselves and create reports with these scientists. Apart from that, scientists or scientific stories need to be interpreted for the benefit of the public. So we have a need to ensure that there's maybe local information that can be channeled to our people. In Zambia, we know that a lot of our people are illiterate. So what are we doing to ensure that we reach those that cannot be able to receive this information using the official language that we are using right now, like use Bemba, Nyanja, and any other language that can be beneficial for them. Journalists are also struggling to get accurate information from their governments, which are attempting to control the public narratives about the unprecedented health crisis. So sometimes you find that, in fact, it's a real issue where you need not to go to maybe the hospital to check on the patients. But I feel it can be important for us to even go and check for ourselves to see if really this is what is happening. And usually when we do that, people can get first-hand information because we are able to show what the scenario is. And we're also looking at ensuring that stories are based on the truth, not opinions, and science, not speculations. So there is need for us to ensure that these stories are based on the truth and not the opinions of people. And safety while reporting on COVID-19 is still a challenge for the media personnel here in Zambia. You go out to go and look for information out there, but the people that you find maybe are not even vaccinated and not even take the rest of the health COVID measures. And efforts by government and conflicts have become a major obstacle in reporting on COVID-19 pandemics in Africa. There are some African countries where they take this COVID-19 pandemic as a political issue instead of leaving it to be a standard alone, because it actually calls for everyone to be embracing it and see how best they can help out. Now, the impact of COVID-19 to the journalists here in Zambia, we see that due to the economic hardships media outlets are facing because of the pandemic, some journalists have actually been laid off. And changes to the structure of newsrooms and methods of reporting have been made. Some of us are actually going maybe 3 times a week to our newsrooms, and we find that we are working double the effort. We're putting in double the effort that we used to put in, because we need to ensure that you report accurately and you also have the necessary stories you are supposed to have in a bulletin. So another thing is that journalists' mental health and well-being has been actually a challenge. And this is due to the stress and the anxiety that we do face. I go in the field every day, and when I come out of the field, if I go home, I am thinking, have I contracted this COVID-19? Are my people okay? Are they going to be put into a challenge because of my work? So our mental health well-being has been a challenge. It needs a lot of counseling from a lot of people, so that we get to also accept that this is the kind of work that we're doing, and we need to ensure that the reporting is done according to how the mental health is supposed to work out. Then more work on the journalists to counter misinformation, disinformation, and the global debate has been imposed on the journalists. Because of this misinformation, the videos, the audios, everything that we're able to see that is a disinformation or misrepresenting the facts, we have now more work to counter-react on what they are saying. And another thing is that journalists have also suffered pay cuts, lost revenue, canceled commissions, or worsening working conditions. And we have seen that despite all these things, more than a third of the journalists have shifted their focus to covering COVID-19 related stories. But this in effect has also caused that other disease burdens are overlooked at. So we're not concentrating much on the issue of COVID-19 and HIV, pandemic. We are not concentrating much on the diarrhea cases that we're facing in Zambia, but more to do with COVID-19. Then it is difficult for journalists to go out and interact with communities in compliance with the measures put in place to prevent the spread of the COVID-19, because up to now, we have not seen people investing so much to the media in terms of PPE. So the media themselves are the ones that are investing for themselves. And if they cannot manage, then it cannot happen. My recommendation is that we need a reliable source that can speak to the media instead of just relying on the same people always. If it is not the Ministry of Health, if it is not the presidential spokesperson who started vaccinology, then no one can speak. We know that we have a lot of scientists that have done a lot of research or have done a lot of issues concerning vaccinology and other issues on COVID-19. Let them come up and give us information so that we have an interchange of information from people. More information.
Aussi comparer ces informations, beaucoup d'informations pour qu'on puisse mettre dans les communautés afin que les populations locales puissent mettre leurs décisions sur la COVID-19. Et ces informations doivent être partagées peut-être au niveau ministériel, il y a aussi au niveau des médias. Par exemple, pour les médias, on peut aller sur le terrain pour autonomiser la population. C'est pourquoi les parties prenantes et le ministère de la Santé doivent aller auprès des populations pour les aider en utilisant les professionnels de santé sur la base. Mais là aussi, on parle de 8,7% de gens affectés par la COVID-19. Il n'y a que 6,7 millions de populations africaines ont été vaccinées.
Here in Zambia, which is a good thing, but we still need more, because only Zambian content, we need like 8.5 people to be vaccinated. So we still have a long way to go as Zambia and also the African countries, despite the challenges that they might have. So there's also need for health and public advertising campaigns to support local media. We also need the country-based research, because a little has been documented on how the crisis has affected our profession in the media industry. And then we also need the community, the stakeholders need to invest in media personal protective equipment. It's not fair that maybe the ministries and other people can get to receive the PPEs rather than the media personnel who are also on the limelight to go out in the field and teach people about these, and also inquire a lot about the media personnel. We have media associations, we have media related organizations that can help in to bring in these protective gears.
Ms. Zulu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so for the good of time, would have to bring your time to an end and then move to the next speaker, please. We're sorry about that. By the time your time is exhausted, and we'll have to move to our last speaker. So you can respond to questions if they come in. All
no
right?
problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move to our final speaker, reporting on pandemics, the case study, the experiences from Mr. Rabiu Alhassan, Managing Editor for Ghana Facts in Ghana. Mr. Rabiu, if you can hear us, please, you have 10 minutes spot on 10 minutes to present, and then we'll move on to our final wrap-up, please.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, but I think
Rabiu.
you just unmuted me. So can you also hear me?
Yes, you have 10 minutes, please.
Sure. I think the other speakers have spoken enough, so I'm not sure I can even exhaust my 10 minutes. I would be looking forward to lots of questions instead of me doing the presentation for 10 minutes. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and to the organizers. I appreciate the invitation, and I'm really honored to be sharing the platform with the other speakers. My name is Rabiu Alhassan. I'm the managing editor for Ghana Fact. Ghana Fact is a fact-checking project by Fact Space West Africa, which is a West African fact-checking organization leading fact-checking projects in Ghana and the Gambia. For the work we've been doing in Ghana, we started in 2019. Fact Space West Africa is an IFCN verified fact-checking organization, with IFCN being the International Fact-Checking Network. So we started in 2019 by executing a survey to understand the ecosystem of misinformation in Ghana. And in 2019, as we all know, at the time we had not experienced COVID-19. So our research was tailored towards understanding what Ghanaians were concerned about with regards to misinformation, and we devising a way of tackling misinformation on social and traditional media. So from our survey, we understood more than 90% had encountered misinformation in the last year, and more than 60% were suggesting there was the need for a full-time fact-checking organization. And the focus was to work towards tackling election misinformation, which is Ghana's presidential elections in 2020. Then we were hit by COVID-19, I think sometime in March 2020. So we had to devise a strategy to help tackle COVID-19 misinformation, what we generally refer as to the infodemic. So as part of our strategy to deal with the infodemic, we joined an alliance of more than 100 fact-checking organizations around the world under the IFCN COVID-19 Alliance. The alliance involved fact-checking organizations from, I think, about 40 countries, and we were publishing reports in about 70 different languages. So we helped in tackling COVID-19 misinformation, and currently we've produced, I think, more than 10,000 reports, which are largely debunks in a database you can access if you visit the IFCN COVID-19 Alliance database online. We've been working with some of the internet companies to ensure that anytime we produce debunks, we annotate same and make them available to the internet companies, so they are not weaponized on these social media platforms where mostly people are concerned there is the weaponization of misinformation. So apart from we working with the IFCN, we are currently working with the WHO. And the WHO has created a new network called the Africa Infodemic Response Alliance. So for us as Ghana Fact under Fact Space West Africa, together with about 6 fact-checking organizations on the African continent verified by the IFCN, and also the UN agencies, we are working to tackle COVID-19 misinformation. So anytime we are alerted to suspicious claims in relation to COVID-19, we duly prompt WHO officials who, in a very swift way, provide us with scientifically verified information to either confirm or debunk the suspicious claims that are brought to our attention. Beyond that, we have a network we created called the Ghana Fact-Checking Network, which includes more than 100 trained fact-checkers around the country and about 30 media organizations, traditional media organizations, including radio and TV platforms. So anytime we produce debunks following the alerts that come from the journalists who are part of the network, we share it with the partner media organizations to ensure they publish these debunks on traditional media. So our work is to make impact both online and offline, leveraging on the networks that we've created. We are currently supporting the National Misinformation Task Force in Ghana by our offline listening and also our social listening and our prompt debunking of misinformation and our cross-publication of same on traditional media to ensure we help with vaccine uptake and ensure people have verified information and are exposed to more credible information in relation to COVID-19. I think someone mentioned in the chats that there was a survey that was done in 4 West African countries, and for the survey, they understood that many people are not going for the vaccine because they think COVID-19 doesn't really threaten them, and that is that probably shows the impact that misinformation is having on the thinking of a lot of people in the sub-region. I'm just coming from the Gambia, where I went to fact-check the Gambian presidential elections. And quite evidently, what we observed during our period in the Gambia was that a lot of people were not paying attention to the COVID-19 protocols. And when you engage people, it's largely because they feel they are not threatened by the disease. And that is something that points to the misinformation we are seeing on social media and the impact it is having on people, that's ordinary citizens. People are dying of COVID-19. It is important that we try our best in demystifying the pandemic and kind of tackling the myths and conspiracies that it has come with. So basically, this and more are some of the things we have been doing. You can reach us on social media and also via our platform, and that is our website, GhanaFact.com, and also factspace.org to see some of the projects we've led in Ghana and the Gambia. I think basically these are the things I would share with participants, and I'll be looking forward to the questions that would come up during the period. Hopefully we can get to hear some of the work others are doing in the space and how we can even collaborate to ensure we make major impact with regards to the work we are doing. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rabiu Alhassan, for your presentation. And as we get to the climax of this webinar, I would want to quickly bring in a short video as we go on a break to have our Q&A session fully. Let's take a video from the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities for your kind view. Stay with us on this one.
On behalf of the Association of African Universities, Accra, Ghana, I congratulate a great scholar and an ambassador par excellence, Professor Peter Okobokola, on his retirement from the services of Lagos State University. I want to congratulate you for the career that is inundated with notable achievements. Congratulations for flying the flag of Africa in many international higher education fora. You are a person of excellence, and you put your touch of excellence in everything you do. We celebrate your phenomenal achievements, not just as the Executive Secretary of the National University Commission in Nigeria, but also your great contributions, especially in the areas of quality assurance and accreditation processes. You have served as a consultant to the Association of African Universities on many higher education initiatives. You have also made notable contributions to the African Union Commission higher education programs, such as the African Quality Rating Mechanism, AQRM, the Pan-African University Initiative, and the virtual capacity building programs for academics in Africa. Your roles in providing leadership for Guni Africa is highly commendable. Your high level of creativity and positive contributions have made great impacts on higher education in Africa. We are proud of the many learning platforms you created for higher education on the continent. On this occasion of your retirement from the services of Lagos State University, the Association of African Universities is honored to appoint you As an AAU Higher Education Ambassador for Africa, we are proud of your pursuit of excellence and your inspired leadership in Africa. Congratulations to a visionary leader, a great mentor, an innovative higher education icon of Africa and from Africa. Congratulations, Professor Peter Okebukola.
So thank you very much for staying with us to this point of the webinar. And I believe that we have all the questions has been asked and all the answers and scientific facts have been given. But now we'll be taking your final feedback. So final feedbacks from all our experts on some of the comments made or questions made. Just give brief comments. We'll be leaving within 10 minutes. Let's get your views, 2 minutes each. So please, each speaker 2 minutes each, and then let's wrap up from there. So let's hear from you, any speaker who's available. If we can have Dr. Ahinakwa available. Doc, you can please, let's have your 2 minutes remark, and then we'll move to...
So yeah, for me, I would encourage, I can see a number of participants in the call, and also some others who are viewing us from, I think, a central location. It would be great if the feedback we are getting from this conversation could be put together and relayed to us, so we could actually produce some reports around it. For us, we are a fact-checking organization verified by the International Fact-Checking Network. So we are always interested in suspicious claims that are being made around COVID-19. When we get these claims, we rely on health authorities in country and also health authorities with the World Health Organization because of the partnership we have built. The networks, which includes the National Misinformation Task Force Against COVID-19 in Ghana, and also the WHO Africa Infodemic Response Alliance. If we get these suspicious claims, we'll duly verify them and put out reports, whilst also alerting the internet companies to ensure they are not weaponized on their platforms. It's been a great experience, and I'm hoping this would not be the last in terms of engaging the African Universities Association, I think. Would hope to stay in touch and do some future work together. So it's been a pleasure coming through and sharing our work around tackling COVID-19 with you all.
Thank you very much, Rabiu, for your submission, and please go ahead. Please go ahead with your remarks. You have 2 minutes, please. So, for the interest of time, would have to bring it all to an end, but I want to say a very big thank you to our speakers, Dr. Tetteh-Ahinakwa, Ms. Jubiel, Zulu, Mr. Rabiu Alhassan, Jessica Huang, and Mr. Charlse Wendo. Thank you very much for your time and expertise support, providing support to demystify and decipher all of these information that we have in the continent, and very importantly, to the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities, Professor Olushola Oyewole, for your time, for being with us in this event, other health journalists around, members of the media, and also our chairperson, Madam Nodumo, not forgetting the TV manager here at AAU TV, Mr. Ransford McQueen. Thank you very much for being a strong pillar behind the team on set. Also say a very big thank you to my team here with me, Tetteh-Ahinakwa and Meedan, to also my able producer, Abigail Nyani, for aiding us, giving us all that it takes to be here to bring this webinar to you. So at this point, I would say a very big thank you to the AAU and also to every one of you who joined this webinar all over the world and contributed to the success of it. Have a nice day. And as we keep safe against COVID-19, other infectious diseases are coming. Let's keep doing the good job, giving the right information out there, and staying positive. We can do it in Africa. I appreciate your time. My name is Ajimana Chidakum. Thank you very much. Have a nice day, and bye.